Do you find yourself getting really stuck on those IGCSE Completing the Square questions, and however many times you go over it, it's still a real pain to make sure you can do those AA style Completing the Square questions? So by the end of this video, you'll be able to absolutely master the Completing the Square method. Again, I'm going to go through level 1, 2, 3 and 4 and do plenty of exam questions so you get plenty of practice. Hi, I'm the Ginger Mathematician, Sam Gower. I've been teaching for up to 15 years IGCSE A-Level and IB Maths, and I'm going to take you through the easy method that I have found that's helped many students all over the world. Okay, so let's get started on completing the square. So I break this down into 4 specific levels. Usually the questions on IGCSE are levels 1 and 2, but it could be 3 and 4 if they're looking to really stretch and really challenge you. Right, let's get started. So the general way they'll write this at IGCSE is to write x squared minus 2x minus 4, so some kind of quadratic, in this particular form. So as soon as you see this particular form, now you need to be thinking, it's completing the square, CTS for short, where a and b are constants to be found. Okay, so that's the hint we're going to use this completing the square procedure. Right, the way that we go about this as follows. Remember that we can always write a quadratic with an x squared, an x and a number. We're going to look at the number in front of the x. So we're going to look at the minus 2 and we simply find a half of it. So our first step, you can write this out if you want to, is simply we're going to find half of minus 2. So we're going to divide it by 2. And of course, minus 2 divided by 2 is minus 1. Easiest step in the world, makes you feel better before starting the process. Now consider the following. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write x minus 1. So I'm going to take this result up here and then all square it. So that's my starting point of completing the square. Now, rather than getting you to just learn a formula off by heart, a much easier way of doing this is actually thinking about what happens when we expand this normally. Now, what do I mean by this? If I have x minus 1 all squared, remember that's the same as x minus 1 multiplied by x minus 1. And we can use FOIL to actually expand this. So x times x is x squared, x times minus 1 is minus x, minus 1 times x is minus x, and minus 1 times minus 1 is plus 1. Be really careful with that. So this kind of expanding double brackets is really important across the whole IGCSE syllabus. If you want to go into that in more detail, then do check out the video above. Now we can simplify this by actually collecting the middle terms together. Notice we can't collect x squareds with x's. So we leave the x squared alone here. Minus x, so minus 1 is minus 2. So we get minus 2x. And then the plus 1 stays as it is. Now, why have I gone through this? What am I trying to show here? Now notice, if we expand this normally, we get x squared minus 2x plus 1, which is close to what we want. The only difference is we have a plus 1 here and we have a minus 4 at the top. So the thought process is we have a plus 1. I want to get to minus 4. What do I do to 1 to get to minus 4? Well, I subtract 5. So this is what we're looking at, the yellow part. What do I do to 1 to get to minus 4? I minus 5. And that's simply the other number that comes out. Now, if you don't believe that this is actually equal to x squared minus 2x minus 4, what you can actually do is expand. So if you're not happy with this process at level 1, which is perfectly fine, then we can just re-expand. So if I re-expand this, and I'll do this pretty quickly here, this expands as x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 5. That gives us x squared minus 2x minus 4, which is the initial question that we had. So we know our final answer, the correct answer, is this in completing the square form. That's the fundamentals of completing the square. However, there can be some variations on this and basically increase the difficulty. If we go into level 2 here, now why is this actually more difficult? Well, we look at the b term, so we look at this minus 3 here, and our first step, of course, is to divide this by 2, and notice that gives us minus 3 over 2. So with more complicated examples, you do need to be able to work with fractions.
Our second step here is we consider x. So we always start with x, and then we look at what we did in step 1, and we consider what happens when we actually expand this normally. So x minus 3 over 2 multiply by x minus 3 over 2. So again, just like before, we use FOIL. We have fractions, but don't worry, in the calculator exam, so for paper 4, we have it, and paper 2, good enough fraction skills as well. So x times x is x squared. X times minus 3 over 2 is minus 3 over 2x. Minus 3 over 2 times x is minus 3 over 2x. And now we need to remember how to multiply fractions. Minus 3 over 2 times minus 3 over 2, well, that's a positive. Minus times a minus is a plus. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4. Remember, before we do anything, we can always collect the middle terms, known as the cross terms. So we have x squared minus 3 over 2 minus 3 over 2 gives us minus 3x. Now that should always be the case if we've done this right. So this should be the same as this every single time. And then we have plus 9 over 4. Okay, this is where it gets a bit tricky, particularly with fractions. So we have a 9 over 4. So let's get the trusty highlighter out here. Honestly, highlighters are the way to go in mathematics. And we have plus 7. So we have a plus 9 over 4. We want to get to 7. What do we have to either add or subtract? Now, this is a bit more difficult to see here. However, the nice little trick to learn here is that we can actually convert 7. Remember, 7 is just 7 over 1 into a fraction out of 4. Very basic skills, but with all the pressure of completing the square, I completely understand it all goes out the window. So how do I convert 7 over 1 to a fraction out of 4? Well, what do I multiply 1 by to get 4? 4. So I multiply 4 on the top. So I can rewrite 7, which is what we're looking for, as 28 over 4. This makes it much easier to visualize what do I add to 9 over 4 to get to 28 over 4. So you've got a calculator, you can use that, but hopefully at home you agree that we have 19 over 4. 19 plus 9 gives us 28. So this is how we work out the extra term here, 19 over 4, without having to learn yet another formula for IGCSE maths. Now you're probably wondering, oh God, can it get any harder? Well, we do have to be a bit careful with level 3. So level 3, the difference here is we have a 2x squared and not just an x squared. So it adds essentially an extra step that we have to do. So I'm going to write out the question, 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. Our new step 1, before we do anything that we've done in levels 1 and 2, is we take a factor of 2 out. What does that actually mean? Well, let's bring a 2, we're going to open a bracket, and then we work backwards to expanding. So what do you multiply 2 by to get 2x squared? X squared. What do you multiply 2 by to get minus 3? Minus 3 over 2x. Again, you can check any of what I'm doing here by re-expanding. What do you multiply 2 by to get minus 5? Minus 5 over 2. So we're kind of making it ugly in order to do this completing the square process. After that, everything else works as normal. We kind of ignore the 2 until right at the end of the question. So then our step is we look at the b term. So let's get the highlighter out. So our b term here is minus 3 over 2. So what we want to do is divide that by 2. And that's going to give us minus 3 over 4. So that's the important step that we did in levels 1 and 2. Then we consider x minus 3 over 4 all squared. So we expand as normal. And then we see what horrible fraction we get at the end. Let's expand this. So first outside, inside, last. I'm going to do this a bit more quickly now. X squared minus 3 over 4x minus 3 over 4x. Again, timesing fractions. So 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. So again, we have that similar process to what we've done before. So we have a 9 over 16. And we want to get to minus 5 over 2. So let's write that out very clearly. We have a 9 over 16, a plus 9 over 16, and we want to get to minus 5 over 2. This time we've got two fractions, but the way we can compare fractions, just like you do at C grade questions, for example, is we're going to rewrite minus 5 over 2 as a fraction out of 16. So what do we multiply top and bottom by to give us a fraction out of 16? Well, we're going to multiply by 8. 2 times 8 is 16, minus 5 times 8 is minus 40. Now this makes it a bit easier to work out what do we do to 9 over 16 to get to minus 40 over 16. Well, we're going to subtract minus 49 over 16, being very careful with our negative numbers. So that gives us what we need here. Now, I even forgot the 2, but the 2 is still there. We're going to deal with that next. So minus 49 over 16. So in this square bracket, we're just doing that normal process. And now our step 4, so this extra step, is we back multiply. So what I mean by this is we multiply the 2 by the bracket and the 2 by this. Now to multiply the 2 here, we just put them next to each other. That makes it easier for us. And now we multiply 2 by minus 49 over 16. Notice we can do some cancellation. 2 into 2 goes 1, 2 into 16 goes 8. So we get minus 49 over 8. And we have this pretty complicated expression here in the form that we want, this completing the square form. Now, probably after all that fraction work, you're probably thinking, how can it get much harder? Level 4 isn't exactly harder than level 3. It's just something to be aware of. And that's when we have a negative. So we have a minus x squared rather than a plus. The only thing that changes here is we take a factor of minus 1 out, or just the negative out. What does that mean? So we're going to take a minus, you can think of this as minus 1, and we switch all the signs. So we have x squared minus 5x plus 2. Again, anything I'm doing here, you can re-expand and check that you do get to the original. So that's the only extra step here. The rest then follows as normal. So I'm going to go through this a bit more quickly. Hopefully you're building your confidence as we go through this, and we'll do some exam questions at the end. So our step here, we do minus 5 divided by 2. That's minus 5 over 2. Now we consider, I'm going to leave this minus 1 outside. We consider x minus 5 over 2 all squared. Again, we multiply this out. If you're liking this video and this is making sense to you, then please do give it a like and subscribe. That is always very, very helpful. So we get x squared minus 5 over 2x minus 5 over 2x plus 25 over 4. We can collect the middle terms. It's kind of therapeutic when you do lots of these questions. You probably don't believe that at home at the moment. Plus 25 over 4. Okay, so we've got, let's get the highlighter out here. We have a plus 25 over 4. We want a plus 2. Okay, so let's write that out. We have a 25 over 4. We want to get to plus 2. Now 2 can be written as 8 over 4. So what do you do to 25 to get 25 over 4 to get to 8 over 4? Well, we subtract 17 over 4. Again, double check. 17 plus 8 is 25. I'm always doing these double checks as we go through. So minus 17 over 4. And like in level 3, then we re-expand. So this times this and this times this. That gives us minus x minus 5 over 2 squared. Minus times a minus is a plus. Be very careful. And that then gives us positive 17 over 4. So that's the other situation where you have a negative. You have to take a negative out of everything, and then you work it through, very similar to level 3.
Okay, I'd just like to take a break from the maths to introduce you to the live workshops that I am running. So at the end of November, I'm going to be doing an IGCSE Maths non-calculator masterclass. So that is 90 minutes live with me going through the very hardest topics which are non-calculator. So things like surds, working with trig exact values. If those topics absolutely drive you with fear, then do not worry. Sign up in the description below and the pinned comment, and we can go through that nice and carefully together. Okay, back to the video.
Now, often what students ask me at this point is, okay, these are the skills, and maybe I have to watch this again, which is perfectly fine, but how does it actually appear in an exam? I'm glad you asked that question. So this is one form. So write x squared plus 8x plus 5 in this form where a and b are integers. So in this case, a and b are whole numbers. That's a nice clue here. So whenever I see a keyword, I write down what it is in real English. So we find half of 8. So that's going to be 4. Then we consider x plus 4 all squared. Again, I'm doing this more quickly now. Now you're practicing these skills. So if we expand this out, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4x plus 16. That gives us x squared plus 8x plus 16. Okay, so we have a 16. Let's get the highlighter. 16, and we're looking for 5. So what do we do to 16 to get to 5? We subtract 11. So this becomes minus 11, and that gives us all 2 marks. Now, what they can follow up with, which does happen on occasion, not all the time, but occasion, they ask for the turning point of the graph using this. Now, how we actually translate what we've done to get the turning point, we take the number here and flip the sign. So we get minus 4, and then we just read off this number. So we have minus 11. And that then gives us all 3 marks for this question. Now, I saw this on a recent IGCSE Cambridge paper, and this is a kind of sneaky way how they get completing the square in. So notice they've just got a random quadratic, but with some a's, and can be written in this bracketed form. And somehow you have to work out what a and b is. So I'm just using the same process we've done before here. So I look at the b term, so minus 16, I divide by 2. That gives me minus 8. And then I expand x minus 8 all squared. Again, if I expand this normally, that gives me x squared minus 8x plus 64. So x squared minus 16x plus 64. And these two things here are actually the same thing. We haven't added or subtracted anything. And notice that just gives us these values. A is just this value here, which is 64, and B is this value, which is negative 8. So we just put those in and get our 2 marks and move on with a harder question in the paper. I think this is a paper 2, if I remember rightly. Okay, let's go on to one of these more difficult kind of questions with a 2 here. Notice A, B, C are all integers, so they should be whole numbers. That's a good way of checking that we are doing this correctly. So step 1, we take a factor of 2 out, so x squared minus 6x plus 23 over 2. Getting speedy now with this. Then we look at half the b term, so minus 6 divided by 2, which is minus 3. Now we consider, just forget about the 2 for the time being. We have x minus 3 all squared. Let's see what that looks like. I know some of you now can do this in your head, which is really, really good. Saves you a ton of time. So minus 3x plus 9, which is x squared minus 6x plus 9. If you can build up this speed, and this is the whole point of this longer video, that's really, really good. So we have a plus 9, and we want to get to 23 over 2. Now we can write plus 9. Just checking everything's right here. Yep. So we've got 18 over 2, and we want to get to 23 over 2. So we add on 5 over 2. 18 plus 5 is 23. So this is plus 5 over 2. And now we back multiply. I don't think that's the official term for it, but it makes sense to me. So 2 brackets x minus 3 all squared. Notice these 2 cancels, giving us a plus 5. That's really good because c should also be a whole number. So we have it now in the right form. So 2x minus 3 all squared plus 5, super duper, for 3 marks. And now the turning point, like I showed you before, we look at this one in the bracket, we switch the sign, that gives us 3, and then just read off the plus 5. So that gives us 3, 5 for all 4 marks. Again, you can see Here's one I did earlier to give you the 4 marks, and you can check through everything. Notice here, with this, we actually worked in decimals. Here, I worked in fractions. You can choose whichever makes a bit more sense to you. Now, this is basically as hard as it gets at this point. So sometimes, very, very rarely, they could ask you to solve a quadratic using completing the square. So I want to show you at least one example of this, and we're going to be using surds at the end. So first of all, we take our 5 and divide that by 2. So that gives us 5 over 2. I'll deal with this decimal as a fraction later on. So we consider then x plus 5 over 2 all squared. So if we expand this, you're probably bored of me now doing FOIL. So we'll just keep at it. So x squared, last question, x squared plus 5 over 2x plus 5 over 2x plus 25 over 4. Middle terms collect to give us x squared plus 5x plus 25 over 4. Okay, so we have a 25 over 4, and we want to get to 4.25. This is where you want to try and be consistent with either fractions or decimals. Again, it takes a bit of practice to do this. Now, we can write this as 4 1/4, and 4 1/4 is the same as 17 over 4. We do that by doing 4 times 4 is 16, plus 1 is 17. And what do you do to 25 over 4? To get to 17 over 4, well, we're going to subtract 8 over 4. 17 plus 8 is 25. You should always double check these things, and that gives us -2. So that means we need to put -2 here. But notice this is an equation, so this whole completing the square process is equal to 0. And now we just solve this normally. So what I mean by this is do the different operations to both sides. So we're going to add 2 on both sides. This cancels, leaving us x plus 5 over 2 all squared is equal to 2. Then the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So the advantage of doing this process is then you can just solve normally. So this cancels, giving us x plus 5 over 2. Be careful when you're square rooting with equations, we have a plus and minus root 2. That's really important. And then what's the opposite of adding 5 over 2? We subtract 5 over 2 from both sides. This cancels, giving us x equals minus 5 over 2 plus and minus root 2, which is a perfectly good way of writing it, or you can write it as 2 separate answers, minus 5 over 2 plus minus root 2, which gives us then all 5 marks. So if some of this sort of FOIL and re-expanding has been a little bit tricky for you and you're not so sure and so confident and it's preventing you from really understanding completing the square, then do check out the video right in front of you where I spend, I think, about 40 minutes going through all the key algebra skills you need to know to succeed at IGCSE Maths.